Welcome to my YouTube channel Learn to Code with Noob. So today I will be continuing my discussion related to useEffect cleanup methods, how to clean up the resources using useEffect, and some other explanations related to how you can use dependencies in the useEffect method to not re-render useEffect over and over. So let's jump right in. Alright, let's jump into this. So the first thing which I'm going to explain you is how you can utilize the cleanup method in the useEffect hook to do all the cleanup things. So for example, you want to clean up any resources after hitting an API call. You want to abort something if the component is unmounted, right? So if you want to do all kind of stuff like that, all kind of cleaning up of resources, so if you wanted to do it in a traditional class component way, you have to do it in like component will unmount, right? uh, most of the time in this component will unmount, right? But the use effect gives you the same functionality in the same hook. So in the same hook you can basically subscribe to any of the things. So for example, in the use effect you can subscribe. For example, you are subscribing to an API right over here, and then you can mention a cleanup function in which you can just provide an arrow function as simple as that, and then you can mention, hey, what you want to clean up, right? So this is one of the things which you get from the hook. So I will go one by one. So first thing is this, right? So you define in use effect. First thing I am just saying, okay, whenever the use effect runs, this line will get hit, right? And whenever the cleanup of the component happens, this line will get hit, right? So now how we will trigger the cleanup, this cleanup function, is we will just basically change the state of the component. So for example, what I will do is, in this I have a pressable, right? And in this pressable I have a text view which I have made it as a pressable, and whenever I press that text view, right, I am changing a count, right? And I am changing the message state. I mean, I don't have to change that, so I am just changing the count. That's it, right? So obviously when I will change this count, I am using another useState hook, so this thing will get re-rendered. So it will trigger a re-render, and as soon as it triggers a re-render, uh, the cleanup function will get triggered. I will also explain you why this cleanup function is getting triggered on every re-render, like why this thing is happening, and if we want to avoid it, how we can do that. I will explain all of these things, but first of all I will explain this. All right, so I have two pressable regions. One pressable region will just update the count state, the other pressable region will just update the message state. So, and whenever we will re-render, the cleanup function will trigger. So this is how we are doing the cleanup thing. All right, so this is now my component. So this is the region where I'm changing the count. So when I click on it, I will also just open the console, and what I will do is, to make it more clear, I will just kill this thing and just use project. So now we know from where we have to see the console. So from here, 625 view rendered at 0, right? So where this view rendered is getting called, it is inside over here, right? So this view rendered got called over here in the count component. All right. So as soon as this component got mounted, this view rendered got called, right? And this view rendered is also called as soon as this component is updated. So as soon as this component is updated, the view rendered is called. It is when is mounted, the view rendered will be called. That is the functionality of useEffect, and that I have explained in my previous video. All right, so moving further, so as soon as I call this, click this, right? So I'm changing the count state. So you will now seeing the cleanup is getting triggered. So here basically what I'm saying is, hey, whenever you change the state, whatever the previous resources were on the next re-render, everything will get cleaned up first, and then your component rendering happens. So what will be the flow will be is on the next render, when this use effect will run, the first thing which it will do is it will clean up. So whatever the previous resources were on the previous render, they will all get cleaned up, and then the new rendering of the view happens. So then this code hits. So cleanup and then view render happens, right? So now and this cleanup is not only like when you are re-rendering the component this happens. It can happen whenever your component unmounts, right? So for example, whenever you navigate to another screen or deep down into another screen, this component can get unmounted, right? Or if this component is like not rendering for with some specific conditions, then this component it's getting unmounted, right? And when this happens, the cleanup function will run, right? Okay, so now why in use effect on every render this cleanup function hits first, and then whatever the thing is inside this function gets it? So why is that the case? The reason behind that is it is actually made for a good purpose by React, and the reason is they want to clean up all of the previous resources from the previous rendered state, right? So for example, let's say if this wasn't happening, right? So let's say if this cleanup wasn't happening, so let's say I'll just say clean up the count, right, 1 for example, right? And over here I am just saying in the view render subscribe to count 1, right? So let's say if if React said, okay, on the next render we will not run the cleanup first, right? We will not run the cleanup on every render. So what will happen is, so for example, when you change the count value to 2, right, and you have now made the subscription to 2, right, and your component unmounts, but now you will be cleaning up the value of 2, right, not 1. So your previous subscription to 1 was leaked, in the sense it wasn't cleaned up, right? So we don't want that. What we want is, hey, clean up the previous count of 1, right, and then subscribe to count 2. So now on the next render, when the cleanup happens, the cleanup of count 2 will happen first, and then subscribe to count like whatever 3 will happen, right? So in that way, your cleanup of the subscriptions are getting cleaned up in in an optimized way, and also it doesn't does any memory leaks, any kind of memory leaks. So the subscriptions and cleanup happens in a very good way. So that's the whole purpose why on every render this cleanup function runs. Okay, so now you can say, hey, I don't want to run this use effect if my message changes, right? So we don't want that, because over here, if we just go back to whatever our initial implementation was, so over here I'm just basically displaying the count value. I'm not doing anything with the message, right? So what I want to do is, hey, if I change the state of message, don't run this use effect, because I don't care about it, right? So if that is the case, then what we can do is, like, if it was case on the class component, we just have a props comparison, right? But over here in the use effect, the other way is you can actually define the dependencies. So what I actually mean is, so you can say over here like this. So before explaining that, I will just tell you like what is the problem over here. Okay, so right now here is my emulator, and here is my, and I will just again do it from start, because you guys can get confused about it. All right, project, all right. So we have to start watching logs from here, right? So now if on this section I am changing the state of count, right? If I tapped on it, I change the state of the count, so it says clean up the count, right? But on this region I am changing the state of message. So watch, when I'm changing the state of message, when I tapped on it, right, it again said clean up the count. So why I am, even if I'm changing only the state of message, the use effect runs again. That is, I don't want, because I just want this use effect to run whenever there is a change in count, right? Not a change in message. So if I want to do that, how I can do it, I can define count as a dependency over here. So what that does is, now the use effect knows, okay, whenever the count value will change, I will run use effect. If this count value doesn't change, I will not run the use effect. All right, so now I'll just run this, and so now see over here, I will just change the message, right? So the last log was at 270. So now I'm changing the message, nothing is getting printed, but still the message state is updated. You can see the message is still changing, right? But the use effect is not running. The reason is the count state is not changing. That's why the use effect is not running. And that is what we wanted. So now watch, if I change the count state, right? If I change the, okay, I think there is, okay, yeah, it was lagging, but it changed. So after 260, sorry, after 270, you can just see the count state changes and the cleanup was triggered, right? Again, I will do this 209 68. Now if I change the message again, nothing happens, right? So if this is what we want to achieve, we can do this by specifying the dependencies right over here. Now you can go really advanced, and you can also pass in the dependencies. So for example, you can pass in the functions in the dependencies, and arrays in the dependencies. You can define everything in these kind of dependencies, which I will explain in the next video. What are the implications of that? So what right now what useEffect is doing is it is basically comparing the value of count before render and after render. So after render, if the value changes, the useEffect will hit, but if it doesn't change, this thing will not hit. No cleanup will happen, and this whole thing will not get hit, right? All right. So yeah, these are some more learnings and how you can have a cleanup function and how you can define dependencies to optimize your useEffect. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please don't forget to click on the like button. If you don't like this video, please mention why in the comment down below. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep learning.